I've got for you today is the Voigtlander 40mm f2 lens. This is a solid metal pancake lens that feels pretty substantial in my hand. Compare that to the Canon 40mm f2.8 lens, which is pretty plasticky and has a fly-by-wire focus ring. This is kind of a manual lens. When I say kind of, it's because the aperture ring is controlled by the electronics of the camera, but it's still a manual focus lens. The focus ring moves very smoothly and it feels very solid in my hand. So let's take a closer look at the Voigtlander 40mm f2 lens. Setting the Voigtlander 40mm f2 lens next to the Canon 40mm f2.8, you'll see that they're roughly the same height. Both these lenses fall into the pancake category and they're both nice and petite. The Voigtlander weighs quite a bit more than the Canon 40mm f2.8. That's because it's made out of metal. It's nice and solid, and it has a nice and solid focus ring. The focus ring travels 180 degrees, and the lens extends just like on the Canon, about ½ of an inch. The Canon's focus ring is fly-by-wire, so you don't get any kind of turning or motion unless it's plugged into the camera. It's a lot less satisfying than the nice smooth action of the Voigtlander lens. The Voigtlander does feel a lot more substantial than the Canon 40mm, but it's also a $500 lens versus a $200 lens, so that's kind of to be expected. It is weird that this is not a fully automatic lens and instead it's partially automatic, but it is a very nice feeling piece of kit compared to the plasticky build of the Canon 40mm. Even though the Voigtlander 40mm lens is manual focus, it still at least has focus confirmation. So when you get your item in focus, you get a little focus confirmation beep or that little red dot that's in the eyepiece so that you know that your item is in focus. That's a pretty handy feature, and it makes using the manual focus lens a lot more convenient. On a full frame body, I found the f2 was fine. I was able to get things in focus most of the time, although it did slow me down a little bit. On a crop sensor body, it's a little bit trickier to get things into focus, and I found it more convenient to shoot at f2.8 or f4 when I was outside trying to follow things that were moving around to really get stuff into focus fast. Overall, it feels very ergonomic to use this lens on the camera, and it has kind of a nostalgic feel having this nice, well-crafted lens that's manual focus and focusing on things as you walk around. I really enjoyed using this on a full frame body. All right, taking a look at the full frame test results, let's go ahead and go to 100% here. So at 100%, you can see that this is sharp here. As we scroll over to the corners, it's still pretty sharp in the corners at f2. Now scrolling over to the opposite side, you'll also see that it's sharp along the entire frame across the top and over here in the corner. Scrolling down a little bit here, you'll see that there is a slight amount of color fringing on these letters, but it's not too bad overall. You can also see it evident here on this little tassel thing hanging from this oddball mask that I have. Now scrolling down to the very bottom, you'll see that it does darken just a little bit in the corners. There is a slight amount of vignetting at f2.0. This goes away by about f2.8, so it's not too bad overall. Also, the vignetting isn't nearly as strong as it was on the Canon 40mm f2.8 on a full frame body. Looking up here, you can see the difference in exposure levels from here down to here. Overall, it's a pretty impressive performance. All right, taking a look at the crop sensor test results, let's go ahead and go to 100% here. And as we scroll across, you can see that it's pretty much sharp everywhere. In the corners, as we scroll across the top here, and in the other corners. And since the crop sensor utilizes less of the glass than the full frame, I wouldn't expect the test results to be any worse than the full frame test. And of course, since it's on a crop sensor body, the vignetting is pretty much gone. You don't even have to worry about it at f2. Another strange addition to the Voigtlander 40mm lens is this guy right here. This is a little focusing element that basically goes onto the top of the lens, changing the focusing distance from about 1.25 feet to a little bit less than a foot. So you can use that for close-up macro type shots where you need to get really close to your subject and fill the entire frame. that brings it in about even with the focusing distance that's available on the Canon 40mm f2.8. All right, taking a look at the bokeh test results here, I have a picture of the Canon 40mm f2.8 taken with the Voigtlander 40mm, and you can see there is a little bit of color fringing here on the edge of the lens, but the bokeh looks nice and round and beautiful. It's a very nice looking bokeh. Switching over to the Canon 40mm f2.8, you can see how that compares. The bokeh on that is also very nice and smooth. Both of them have beautiful rounded blades that give you very nice out of focus areas that are beautiful to look at. Taking a look at one more bokeh test here, this is with that close-up adapter added to the Voigtlander 40mm lens. And you can see over here that it does kind of egg shape the bokeh a little bit. Instead of being a nice perfect circle, it's more of an oval shape with a little bit of a point, and that is due to the little adapter being screwed onto the lens. One of the nice things about that adapter though is that it gives you a very narrow focus area. It almost feels like shooting with the Canon 50mm f1.2 wide open. And that's kind of a unique effect, so that is kind of useful if you're interested in getting that look. After having the opportunity to spend some time with the Voigtlander 40mm f2 lens, I can safely say that it is a very nice lens. Its focus ring is nice and smooth, it's sharp from corner to corner at f2, and the bokeh looks excellent. Also, the lens itself doesn't vignette nearly as bad on a full frame body as the Canon 40mm f2.8. On the downside, the cost is roughly twice that of the Canon 40mm offering, and it is a manual focus lens. So you're going to have to deal with the regular hassles and issues that a manual focus lens entails. You can't just push the button and get it to focus for you. Now, this lens is about $500, and if you're in the market for a little pancake and you're considering the 40mm, this is definitely one to consider. I'll have a full write-up on this lens, along with pictures and more information on it over at DSLRFilmNoob.com. I'll also have information on the equipment used in this video in the crotch bar below. As always, thanks for watching, and if you like this content, please subscribe.